following for several years in order to keep the fleet up to date. So if you have any questions, he can answer those, and then Gary can talk about the city services equipment.
Alderman Ptolemy.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Chief Benowitz if he could just refresh the council as well as everybody else as to why we go out every year for the cars, as far as the reason behind it.
To refresh everybody's memory, back on the, I believe, the end of January, I came before the council requesting approval to pre-purchase through the state bid process 3 vehicles that we had to order immediately to meet a deadline. Those were 2 Crown Victorias and a Ford Explorer. It was about $60,900 and some odd dollars. The 2 other vehicles that we're looking to replace are administrative vehicles, which would be then the current ones rotated back to the detective division. Our fleet consists of about 21 motor vehicles. We actually rotate the entire fleet within about a 7 to 8 year period on our rotation plan. Once again, these cars are rotated for maximum usage. The current cars that those would replace are 2 1999 Chevy Luminas with about 68 and 73,000 miles respectively on them, and then also a 2000 Chevrolet Impala, which has 89,000 miles on it. So once again, those 2 administrative vehicles the ones that are currently being used would go back into the detective division. They currently have about 30,000 miles on them, and they are about 3 years old. And then the new vehicles would take the place on the roster, and the rotation would then occur and be replaced in about a 7 to 8 year period of time.
If I could, I'd just kind of like to follow up. I mean, and if I could ask Alderman Coles, because I know he's kind of an expertise on the cars. When you talk about like the Chevy that has 89,000 miles on it, I believe, that's actual physical driven miles. That does not include all of the sitting time. What kind of impact does that have on the vehicles, Joe?
Idling time on a car is very tough on the engine, because what happens is the engine has a tendency to overheat a little bit, because the air, even though the fan is running and pulling through, it still doesn't allow the engine to cool properly. And you take a car that's got 80,000 or 85,000 or 90,000, and you idle it. If it's a patrol car, every time they stop, they don't shut the cars off. They keep them running. And so you figure they put on another 50,000 miles of idling. So now you're talking about 130,000 on the car. So, and that costs a lot of money when it comes to repairing it, because then they start wearing out. And then when they start wearing out,
Alderman
it
Coles,
costs you more to fix it than it is to repair it.
and that's exactly the situation we're in right now, Alderman Coles.
And-
You're absolutely right. With regards to the 1999 Chevy Lumina we have right now, we just went through a heater core and a radiator with that. So you can see the repair rate is starting to rapidly
So I guess,
increase.
well, what I was trying to get at, and I want to be, and thank Alderman Coles. What I was trying to get at was that the policy that we have of replacing the vehicles and the turnaround going to usually 2 at a time. I believe usually it's 2 every year. Sometimes it's 3 vehicles a year. And the reason behind it is because in the long term, it is more cost effective for the city because of the amount of miles, not just physical driven miles, but the idling miles that are put on in those vehicles. So I guess what I was getting at was that the policy itself is a good policy, and down the road I would hate to see the council change that policy. That was it.
I'll call Alderman Subak, then Alderman Coles, then Alderman Wesley.
Chief, you
Alderman
mentioned one of the vehicles had 67,000 miles.
64, 68,000 miles.
And where is that vehicle going?
That would go out for auction or to the Public Works Department if they had some suitable need in that division.
I understand the cycle and the process and the explanation, but to me, to send a car with 68,000 to the auction seems premature. That seems like not enough miles on it quite yet. Maybe it's too much for the police officers to be using on a regular basis with the idling time and all that. But to ship to auction at 68 seems a little bit low.
Isn't that the one that just blew the heater core? And,
Exactly. Some of these cars do have some inherent problems on them.
Right.
And once again, we start looking at a diminishing return with regards to our maintenance of motor vehicle account on the commodity side of our budget. So, it is specific to the car. If there's some other usage within the city, obviously that's an option that can be looked at. But once again, if the car has repeated problems, it's maybe something best let go to auction.
Alderman Coles.
I believe city services keep a track on how much they spend on each individual car. And if a car starts costing them $200-300 a month, it isn't worth having it around. Another thing too is when I first got on here, I suggested to lease the cars. And I think that is a good policy, and I think we're getting our money's worth out of leasing them. That was one of the suggestions that I had when I first come on. And I think the chief is doing the right thing.
Thank you. Alderman Wesley.
Gary, maybe you can answer this because I'm sure the police don't know about chipper truck here. How many miles is on that truck?
I don't know the mileage off the top of my head. That is a 10-year-old vehicle, and we don't cycle them through in 3 years because our trucks don't sit with the idling time on them. Our mileage or our time comes, much longer down the road. So we do try and get a 10-year turnover on our truck. I can give you the mileage by next week, but it's based on maintenance records. And when you start to get a vehicle that's that age, you're starting to put a lot of money into it on the preventative maintenance side, and you got to look at the costing over time.
Okay, the other one, if I mind, the half administrative vehicle for city service, what vehicle are we looking at to buy for that?
Again, probably very similar to the administrative vehicles that are going to be bought for the police department. I don't know if they're going to buy Impalas or Taurus or something along that line.
An administrative vehicle, is that going to be pretty much the same line for the city manager?
Yes, they would probably be equal to that. We had a problem with Ford. The Tauruses are no longer offered on a fleet program. The Impalas, we found that the failure rate on those as you go on is extremely high, so we're going to look for some other options with regards to keeping it on a comparable level. We're hoping that Ford may, as the year goes on, offer either the 500 or the Fusion on an administrative package, and at that time we'll probably look to that.
Okay, and where does the city manager car go after this one, may I ask?
That would go to the detective division.
Okay.
Mr. Holm.
And with I think I have 7 vehicles total in the overall budget.
Mhm.
The police department has then 2 additional vehicles. I don't know if there is any other vehicles proposed in the department and any of the other departments, but the idea was to take one big package mixed with, trucks and cars, and maybe go to a Ford dealership and say, here's 9 vehicles, $1 million worth of vehicles, give us a good price, and presumably we could get, a good price by sending out one large package like that, and be able to get, the Fusion or a 500 at a reasonable equivalent to the state purchase price by sending out one large big package. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Holm, I have a question on the chipper truck as well. Will we also be replacing the chipper itself? That I know when we do our wood chips right now, they don't get down to that finer grain, and there's roots in there, and there's some real larger size that aren't really usable. So are we replacing the chipper as well?
That question's a little more complicated, but I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version. The chipper right now is getting towards the end of its life. We will need to invest in a new chipper. There's a better way to do the mulch than with the chipper truck, because with the chipper truck, you get the weeds, you get all the things that people really don't want to go putting in their residential lots. If you use a tub grinder, which is a different process, you get the type of chips that a landscaper produces. With the treatment plant site, and I know why am I not talking about the treatment plant site, but the new treatment plant site will produce compost that people would like for their landscaping. In combination with that, if we do a tub grinder, rent a tub grinder on a regular basis, and then produce chips, we could have both chips and compost down there available for pickup or available for delivery to people's homes. So until the decision is made on the treatment plant site, we're going to hold off on the chipper, if that makes sense. And we're going to hold off on the chipper for another year or two just to see where we're going. And then if we're going to get to a new treatment plant site, we'll probably won't replace a chipper. We'll probably just begin renting a tub grinder and doing it that way.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Subak.
Chief, one of the items is 17 tasers to equip the entire department. Can you tell me how many we have now as far as tasers?
Currently, we have 12 that are being used in the on the street on a limited basis by select officers that have been specially trained. Recently, we just had one of those go down. It's being sent in for repair. Those were acquired in 2000 and 2001.
And are they the same tasers, or has the technology changed?
Technology's changing on that. They're getting more compact. Some of the earlier ones we bought in 2000 are substantially larger than the ones that were purchased the following year. Our whole idea here is to limit the officer liability. If you look in our yearly report, last year we deployed the tasers on four occasions. We've done it already 5 times this year on making arrests to avoid officers having to get into an escalated confrontation. We found them to be very useful with limiting not only our liability but also cutting down on the injury rates to our officers.
Is the 17 going to replace the old ones, or is it just going to be a gap where some people are going to have the old ones, some will have the new ones?
What we're going to do is with the newer units, we're going to get those to the people that are on the street, the line police officers. The additional 12 units that are out there, we'll issue those and get additional training for our supervisors, also for our detective division, and they'll be deployed in that manner.
Last time before we bought those, we had a demonstration in the council chambers, which was probably the best meeting I've been at in 7 years. Is there any way, including Deputy Chief, we can get a demonstration before May 1st, before these are purchased?
Are you volunteering, Alderman?
I may, or maybe the mayor, we can draw straws. It might be very exciting, we could, lowest straw goes.
I know the council's time is very precious. If any member would like to come down to the police department, we'd be more than happy to do a one-on-one demonstration.
Alderman Ptolemy.
I think if we could, I thought it was, I would agree with Alderman Subak. I thought it was very good. And I think at some point, I think it would be good because a lot of people watch these meetings. And I think if they saw the effect it can have, I don't know where we can find somebody to do it on, but
I'm sure we can find somebody. As part of the training to be certified on that, you have to submit yourself to being zapped.
okay. But I would agree. Instead of trying to come down, I think that if you could, plan a demonstration somewhere before,
We'll make sure that it
May,
happens.
that would be ideal.
Thank you. Alderman Coles.
All first year, aldermen have to be zapped.
Alderman Wesley.
The train RTA lot, the 46,900, is that coming out of the donations from the community? Are we paying that first, and is that coming out of the money that was given to us for that train station? I'm on equipment replacement, the list right below the taser gun, the emergency phone tower. Was that part of the contributions from the contractors and we paying it up front first and getting that money back in, or is that going to be something we added on?
That's not contribution.
That's neither.
Not at all. That's something that was,
That was in this year's budget. However, we couldn't implement it because of the schedule for
Oh,
the
okay,
building.
so we're just
So-
rolling it over. Okay, that's
That's
fine.
correct.
Alderman Ptolemy.
I have one, as long as we're talking about that specific list. There's an item, it's called Replace Department AEDS.
Right.
Could you
Those
explain
are
what those
our AEDs, our defibrillation equipment. In all of our squad cars, we don't have them in there on a permanent basis. They are drawn out as the vehicle's taken because of weather considerations. Those units are approximately 7 years old right now. They're coming up on the end of their life cycle. This year, we have to make a decision whether or not if we're going to replace batteries on those. We've already done that once. We've already done a software update on that to be compliant with the American Heart Association. Once again, it's probably our best policy when we do use those that we have the best technology available for that person at that moment, and this would be a rotation for those. And as a matter of fact, the one company is willing to give us $200 a piece on a trade-in on those.
Good, thank you.
Alderman Knipe.
Yeah, in taxometers, you have 5 portable. How come we're, say, equipping all our officers 7 with tasers, but we're not equipping them with these? Because they go to grand jury now without a field test, they're thrown out.
This is for a replacement. We've been getting by with the 5 that we do have right now. Once again, those are things that the officers draw out pretty much on midnight shift. So we pretty much get our usage and our deployment on that. That would be redundant.
So these 5 are adequate for our
That would meet
number
our
of
purpose,
stops?
sir.
Because weren't we planning on bringing our DUIs in-house or so?
Yes, we are, and we do use those PBTs. We just had an occasion with a rather large party where we had quite a few underage drinkers where we actually brought those to the scene, administered what we needed to do before we brought the juveniles back to the station and released them to their parents. But 5 would be adequate to meet our needs.
Okay.
Alderman Subak.
Frank, when you look at the trend as far as police operating equipment in '05, we spent about $52,000 in '06, $59,000, and now this year we're looking at $92,000 as far as equipment, not vehicles. And then actually from there forward, it's getting even higher. What do you see as far as the amount of the equipment that the police need, or the equipment that's out there, or rising costs? What is making this cost get so much higher? And if it is higher, are you seeing any kind of reduction in as far as overtime or personnel or anything like that as a correlation?
Well, just as a reminder, this $46,900 on the kiosks for the cameras in the RTA station, that actually brings it down our expenditure, because you've got to figure we have a carryover from the previous year about to $54,000 for this year. I think that's pretty much what we've been seeing. I could tell you that with regards to to time saving, a great example of that is the live scan that we've had. We've just were able to cut down on officers waiting around in the station, making sure that we have the identification of people. Technology is our friend. And not that we have to chase technology, but we have to stay up to date with it, and we have to make sure that we use it to augment our skills and abilities so that we can be as proficient and as effective as possible. There's going to be time to time where things have to be replaced. The AEDs is a great example of that. It would be short-sighted of us to keep on using an 8-year-old unit that we continually have to haul out every day. There's chance of a failure for it. When you need it to work, you need it to work.
Is there any equipment that got eliminated before it came to us that you still think you might need?
Not at this time. I think the staff has been pretty good on making sure that we don't come and we keep our request as reasonable as possible so that we can be good stewards of the money that is allotted to our department.
I make a motion to accept the equipment replacement fund as presented. Is there a second?
Second?
Second.
On the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next fund would be the Information Technology Fund.
The Information Technology Fund basically handles all of the computer, telecommunications, voicemail, and other systems. As you know, we outsource our data processing support. We do have somebody who can handle our email problems, handle system down problems, and we don't have a full-time employee who does that. We have outsourced that and saved a whole lot of money because of it. This year in the Information Technology Fund, there will be some one-time items. The biggest one, of course, is the financial software replacement. It's in the budget here for $180,000. And then our IT support services, as I just mentioned, that's the outsourcing, it's $20,000. The city does have a T1 line that we pay a monthly charge for. We've been scanning more and more of our documents in the city because there is no room to store these documents. Also, it's much easier to retrieve documents that need to be saved for various statutory reasons once they've been scanned. So we have something in the budget for that. And then finally, obviously, from time to time, computer equipment fails, so we do have to replace some PCs. We have to upgrade software. So that's what's been put into this budget. Jeff Murmas, I think, can give you probably some more details about what's gone into the information technology budget other than the financial software, and I can talk about that. And I will have a recommendation for the council, hopefully at the next meeting.
Any questions? Mr. Murmas, did you want to give a brief discussion, or are you just looking for questions, comments?
I'm really looking for questions. I mean, I have all the line items on here, and I have a description of what they are and why we need them, and any changes from the previous year if you had any questions.
Alderman Wesley.
Jeff, let me ask you a question. How often do we replace the printers in the departments? Do we have a program that every 3 years we move
Yeah, we
new
do have a
printers?
printer replacement program that's lumped in with our computer replacement program and our monitor replacement program. The city used to purchase standard standalone HP printers, and then we'd pay extra for toner, and we'd outsource the IT support if the printer broke down. What we're doing now is, as these HPs are getting older, we're phasing those out and going with a model called the Kyocera. And with the Kyoceras, we also get a maintenance agreement where we'd pay like 7/10 of a cent or a penny per page we printed. And with that, we get free toner, free parts, and free repairs for any of the machines. And I did a cost calculation last budget year, and you save hundreds of dollars doing that. So there's a rotating plan. We're phasing out the older printers, and each time we buy a new printer, we try to get on that maintenance plan because the cost of ink cartridges and toner is just really expensive.
I do a follow-up. How many, with this budget for this year, how many printers are we replacing? It doesn't say. I got a ballpark figure, $7,000 for printers. I mean, what's that?
Probably about 4.
4? Do you think we need to replace more than 4, or
We may not replace any.
you're just budgeting for 4?
Yeah, it really depends on, as the printers get older, how much they break down. If they're not breaking down, then there may be no need to purchase a new printer. But last year we did have about 4 break down.
All right. That's fine, thank you.
And a follow-up to that, I know we have our copier lease agreement, and so this budgeted is above and beyond our leased copiers, correct?
That's in a whole nother budget. Yeah, it's
Okay, thank you. Alderman Subak.
I haven't checked for us, but do we have our code online yet through the website?
yes, it's under public information.
Okay.
Header public.
We can
information.
pull the whole zoning code and we can pull all that down.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
I make a motion to accept the Information Technology Fund as presented. Is there a second? Second. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I believe this would be a good point for a 5-minute intermission or so, and then we'll pick it back up. So I'm going to recess the meeting now.
We ain't got much more to go.